LA Fire Department now responding.
We're tired! We're sick and tired!
Really the epicenter of Fairfax and Beverly.
Now we see more senseless looting.
I'm not looting personally. As you see, I'm out here peaceful protesting, but I support my brothers and sisters that are.
Just like every time I watch a protest, it seems like we lose focus on what we're actually doing.
In order for us to really make noise, it has to hit them where it hurts.
On Saturday, it was definitely a conversation about doing a big protest, but what we didn't expect is that when we got to Pan Pacific Park, is that there were people as far as the eye could see. And I remember we began with the pouring of libation, which is something that we always do, honoring ancestors and those who walked before us. We did a land acknowledgement with some of our indigenous comrades. And then we did a lot of kind of spiritual grounding before we talked about why we were there. And we wound up marching down 3rd Street towards Fairfax.
And as we came into Saturday, we saw increasing threats against police, violence against officers. And we also saw that protest activities were now being announced in other parts of the city, primarily on the west side. In Pan Pacific Park, a BLM protest. It was an unpermitted demonstration, but while it didn't advocate for violence, we expected a larger crowd than one would say normal in that park.
This whole area along 3rd near Pan Pacific Park and the Grove, it is all shut down.
We provided for command and control to have resources available on the west side that would facilitate that demonstration. If there was a march or spilled into the street, that we would do everything possible again to facilitate and safeguard our people as well as the surrounding area.
There's a little pushing and shoving. This is where it gets into a real dangerous situation.
When we got to 3rd and Fairfax, there were just people everywhere, on buses, on bus benches. Patrice Cullors, one of our co-founders, was there with us, and she had just spoken. And then as the Youth Vanguard was speaking and preparing to close out, you could feel almost the sense of doom. And there had been police along the way, but it was, I can't even describe the feeling, but it was a sense of doom. And I remember feeling as a mom, I was there with my 3 children, and I remember feeling like this is not gonna be good.
I don't think a lot of people remember this, but that day was a big day for this country also, because it was the first time that SpaceX was launching 2 astronauts into space.
Liftoff of the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon.
And I got a call actually from a friend who lived down the street and said, "Are you watching this? Are you seeing what's happening on TV?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" I thought that he was talking about SpaceX and the launch. And he said, "No, turn on the TV." I turn on and I see the large masses of people, the protests, the police officers.
Several LAPD cruisers vandalized, burned, at least 2 set on fire.
So I put on some clothes and just walked right into that Fairfax area, which was really the heart of where the protests were taking place. And I started broadcasting from my cell phone, which is no different than what some of the protesters themselves were doing.
Just walking amongst the crowd here, there's a lot of young people. By and large, there's large crowds here wanting to be sort of like part of this moment in history.
It was only later in the late afternoon, early evening that it began to see riotous acts, looting, vandalism, that then spiraled.
More shots being fired, more being fired, more than one person now being arrested.
We saw officers that were being pelted, that were being attacked. We saw them being surrounded. We saw police vehicles that were set afire. And as I responded out to that scene, I saw a workforce that was doing its best to try to isolate and arrest those responsible, and when it wasn't able to begin dispersing those into the surrounding community. And yet it was overwhelmed by the sheer number of individuals.
Bill, is it just Rodeo Drive that you're looking at right now with this crowd?
Literally right at the intersection of Rodeo Drive and Santa Monica Boulevard, right at that intersection.
So after Beverly Hills kind of calmed down and got looted and the crowd was cleared out, I got sent to the Melrose district, which was like, it looked like a bomb went off when I got there. There were multiple businesses on fire. A bunch of them had been looted. The fire department was on scene trying to put out these fires.
We are watching firefighters. They are trying to put out a fire on Melrose.
But when I first came on the scene and met with some of the protesters, there was actually sort of a sense of jubilation in a weird way, just because people were so happy to be together, to be united, and all working towards one cause. People were literally like high-fiving each other in the streets, but then there were people who took advantage of the situation too. So even as we were marching down Melrose, there was at one point that some of the protesters actually started smashing windows. They were just bent on destruction. They were moving so fast, the cops really couldn't keep up with them with everything else that was going on across the city.
Unfortunately, that night, into the late afternoon, into the evening, we were not seeing success. And that's where the mayor and I, we discussed the issuance of a curfew.
We cannot fulfill our duty to protect life when people are looting, when we see fires set, when the violence escalates. No one wins.
I love the Fairfax district. I love Melrose. I always thought it was a place of great diversity, of opportunity for emerging designers, and I thought that was a little bit sad to see that a place that brought people together in diversity was then a place of damage and violence.
Then I'm listening to Bob DeCastro's live shot in my IFB, which is our earpiece, as people are just looting in front of him.
They went to the back and got more stuff, and then they're going to this car. What surprised me the most was they saw me and my photographer walk right up to them. We were on live TV, and yet that didn't seem to stop them from doing what they were doing. They were that brazen, or they were that bent on really stealing from these businesses. They were willing to commit all of these crimes while we were filming them. There was at one point where one of the looters had turned to us and said, "Just don't get my license plate. Just don't get my license plate." Officers are moving in. More foam bullets are being shot. More foam bullets are being shot.
It was a matter of trying to de-escalate this crowd, not to allow those acts of violence and those attacks on the community to cause us to continue to escalate our tactics.
I remember we had a crazy live shot where we were standing on Melrose as all these businesses are burning behind us. There's a line of SRT deputies on the road with their big pickup truck, and then a crowd over to our right of protesters yelling at them, throwing stuff. Somebody throws a glass bottle at SRT.
Someone just threw a bottle at them here. Oh, that was a glass bottle.
And I remember watching it in the air going, oh, here we go, we got a bottle coming in. And as soon as it hit the ground and shattered, the SRT team just like opened up with flashbangs, pepper balls, all sorts of stuff, cleared everybody out.
Flashbang. Here we go. Yeah, so that's exactly what we're talking about here, guys. They're throwing a lot of stuff at the protesters here. Someone threw a glass bottle at them, and that is met with a big response.
And I remember just looking down the street, billowing smoke, orange glows, just the smell of fire everywhere, spray paint graffiti all over the place, thinking like, what the hell just happened here? You know, it was a scene I will never forget.
So that next day, that Sunday, I was out there in Santa Monica, and everything unfolded so quickly that day because it started off very peaceful. It was a really powerful demonstration of people of all walks of life, all races, all coming together with signs talking about cases of George Floyd, but also Breonna Taylor, Michael Brown, and it was really powerful to see just hundreds of people in the street peacefully protesting. But then something else started happening.
So you got all the law enforcement right by the beach, but that was a peaceful protest. The problem is the rest of Santa Monica was essentially open and became like the Wild Wild West.
It wasn't a protest at that point. It was like looting and destruction.
Tear gas is firing off.
And I think most people would agree that there were probably people that saw an opportunity and moved in there.
Actually, you can see right here, people are going into vans. There are a number of people inside of this van store.
I was thinking in particular that van store. I was trying to talk to people, what are you doing? You know, why are you doing this?
Hey, why are you taking all of this?
It was just a frenzy of activity. Where did you come in from?
Huh?
Where did you come in from?
Indiana.
Indiana?
Yeah.
We moved from the peaceful protests to the break-ins that were happening.
You guys want to come back to us? Hey, do you guys want to come back to us?
And we come across this REI store, and I'm seeing a woman named Natalie being just tossed about in front of the store. And I'm thinking, I honestly couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Hi, if you could tell us about why you decided to stay here and defend this store.
Because it doesn't need to get looted. That's not what this is about.
I knew that this was a moment that needed attention, that needed to be captured, because I thought it was really powerful to see her with her sign standing there, not moving, even though she is being yanked in multiple directions. And at one point, someone even threw a device at her of some sort. And it just got so hostile so quick, but she didn't even seem afraid. And her friend who was with her, Zishan, was also there in the background trying to talk to these people and say, what are you doing?
I said, you can't be doing this, this is wrong, like this is supposed to be a peaceful protest. I see Natalie, she's in the front and she's using her whole body to go and cover up the door. But then I notice that the guy shoves her and pushes her, and I instantly turn on like my guard mode, and I told him, hey, I'm armed, get out, and just get gone. And he starts yelling and yelling.
I still get chills thinking about that moment, because I just think it was so powerful, and it was such a moment showing what people thought was really at stake. They wanted to make sure that the movement didn't get twisted, that people knew why people were out there, and they didn't want the narrative to change.
We are here for the protest, but when we see people looting, it defeats the cause. So we decided we would come here, and when we see anything happen, any violence or anything that shouldn't happen, we're gonna try our best to stop it.
This system, it doesn't work. This is why it's happening, but we can't take it out on other people. These local businesses, they had nothing to do with this.
When we went to Santa Monica, our idea was to go down the protest and speak out and say like Black Lives Matter and focus on a peaceful protest.
But there was so much violence. There were a lot of people throwing fireworks and like smoke bombs.
Someone just flew.
Especially directly towards us.
I think we saw a moment of humanity. The good in humanity, the good in people who are willing to step up and say, no, we want to stand up for the message and not the opportunity to do wrong, commit fraud, commit crime, steal somebody else's belongings, damage buildings, damage a community.
I was blown away. Those two were there to make sure that voices were amplified and heard, and they didn't want people at home, the viewers who were glued to their TVs, to believe that there was not a peaceful protest happening. So they're going out there defending stores on their own. And I just thought that was really impressive, really brave too.
I felt like I was a part of history in the making of making sure that people were safe.
We're gonna see where the next place is getting looted. I'm sorry, but we do have to leave.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So as you see, the two of them, they're on a mission.
Santa Monica looked like it had been bombed.
Look at what happened in here. The cash registers tipped over, the ATMs destroyed. This is some of the most graphic destruction that we've seen in Santa Monica today.
That CVS store, I think it was totally destroyed.
Police couldn't be everywhere, and some of the Santa Monica business owners felt that they were better off taking their own security into their own hands. But as the sun goes down, it was wild. I mean, everywhere we drove, every intersection, building alarms going off, glass shattered everywhere.
It was extraordinary to see that it was basically free reign on take whatever you want from whatever store you want.
I personally don't condone tearing stuff up and things like that, but I understand. It's a sense of cry for help, like, hey, pay attention, look at me, my life matters.
I was very dismayed at the violence. Now, I completely understand people being just frustrated beyond belief, but when people damage property, that does absolutely nothing to the cause. Now that might make that individual feel better because they got off a little steam, but that actually hurts the cause. But it has a double effect because unfortunately when violence like that happens, it's blamed on black people, whether it's black people participating or not.
On one end, we want less violence, we want more peace. But on another end, we go out there and commit more violence and we disrupt peace in order to obtain the very thing that we want. And so that's where it made it hard for me to respond to some of these protests, because I'm like, we're out here causing violence and chaos in the name of peace, but we're going about it the wrong way.
So I think it's really important that when we talk about violence, that we not equate property damage to the theft of black life. And it seemed that there was almost a deliberate attempt to shift the story from the theft of black life to property damage.
If you're talking about legitimizing the burning down of business to somehow show some form of legalized protest, I reject that argument. I recall a BLM member of Chicago when they were burning down the city. And she said on TV, it's okay, they got insurance money. I was shocked. It's okay to break the law in order to modify the law? No, we are a nation of laws.
I don't consider property damage anywhere in the ballpark of the theft of life or even the brutality experienced by protesters who were protesting police brutality. I think that we have a right to rage, right? We have a right to yell. We have a right to be in the streets. We have a sacred duty to shut down businesses as usual. And that doesn't make us violent. That makes us freedom fighters. That's what it makes us.
The bad part of the George Floyd case, it was used, manipulated, exploited by groups that were only interested in profiteering. And I hate that. You had Leo Terrell angry about the George Floyd death. And you had Leo Terrell very angry about the looting and the rioting and how people were trying to justify their anger about the George Floyd death by breaking down and burning down buildings. I didn't accept that. I rejected that argument.
What is your message? Oh,
my message is,
Leo,
I'm sorry.
No, we are sorry. We're sorry for the pain within the community. We're sorry for this moment for you.
Stop the criminal misconduct. That's all I can tell you, Marla. It's gotta stop.
Can't talk about it because I'm choked up now by it. Can't do it. That's my Achilles heel. Can't do it. Break time.
Go talk to the business owners who had their places burned down and tell them that their business isn't their life. Go look at Santa Monica, Saki House that burned down. It never recovered. It's not there anymore. Go talk to the business owners who don't have a lot of money, who don't have the world, and who lost it all during that week, and tell them that's not their livelihood.
One of the things that I've always said to a lot of activists when we were younger and as we've gotten older is that you can't get in the way of your message.
You had thousands upon thousands of people
out there protesting, and you had a very small number of people who were perpetuating violent acts in the street. And yet, a lot of the focus was on that small number of people who were committing crimes, as opposed to the larger, overwhelmingly larger number of people who were protesting peacefully and constructively.
I had to remind people, if we're gonna make a point, there's a way to do it, right? Let's be smart about how we do this, all right? Because at the end of the day, don't let them or allow people to turn it around and say, hey, see, this is why things happen to them. Because look what they're doing.
Typically, whenever the National Guard shows up, the looting stops. What a disaster on getting it called, though. If you remember correctly, that first day after Fairfax District and when Beverly Hills was starting to get looted, Mayor Garcetti was asked, do we need the National Guard? Are we going to call them in? And he goes, no. 3 hours later, they were called in.
Things escalated, as we saw. It got exacerbated.
The mayor chose to call in the National Guard on us rather than address the fact that LAPD continues to kill and brutalize people, right? So the mayor chose to call for more police brutality as we were demanding justice and protesting police brutality.
Hey, excuse me, you're stealing that merchandise?
The police were not there. They can explain it however they want, but hours went by with no visible presence of law enforcement. Now, were they at other calls? Were they handling other things? Of course. Should they have been at 4th and Broadway? I think so.
We have a short memory. We don't learn from our own history.
Oh, look at that. Terrible. And there's no police presence down here.